Education is currently undergoing a major reform, something that many may not even realise. This is its perception and use of knowledge. Throughout history, knowledge and its transmission was very straightforward. You go to school to learn the basics and get a job. The result of this education is that individuals go on to form practical skills and make physical objects. However, the world has changed. This is due to globalisation and what is referred to as a knowledge-based economy. Whilst there are countless opinions and definitions of a knowledge-based economy, the general consensus is that the world is shifting away from a focus on physical tangible assets, helping to create what some regard as a weightless economy. People are no longer sought after for the physical skills they possess, but rather the proof of knowledge they hold. Due to global competition, individuals have become their own competitive resource. Effects of this can be seen here in the UK, as our current government stance on education is to push knowledge rather than personal development or practical skills. This push for knowledge infers that teachers are only an information giver and a spoon feeder, that their only purpose is supplying students with the core knowledge so that the nation may compete in global charts. Adding to this, the World Bank created a detailed catalogue and ranking of the world's knowledge economy. This list, clearly showing knowledge economy as a competition, contained 4 distinct criteria: economic and industrial regime, information and communication technology, innovation systems, and education training. Surely these factors indicate that education's only importance is its effective transmission of knowledge. ICT is a very intriguing topic, as children and our students in our 21st century society grow up surrounded by and using technology daily. ICT developments have transformed the way we see the world and how we interact with it. Therefore, it must have also had a great impact on education. The question is this: does technology help or hinder education? Does it help provide a varied education, or does it only fuel the notion that education is purely a transmission of knowledge? Technology and ICT definitely helps the education system due to its global outreach. As Thomas Friedman indicates in The World is Flat, the world has a far greater access to technology. This removes any great division between nations, allowing all countries to have equal access to knowledge. This arguably neoliberal opinion supports the ideas of a weightless economy. Whilst this is evidently beneficial, as anyone can look anything up on the internet, it has become its own economy, as now there are many websites such as Masterclass that offer paid-for tutorials which can be accessed from around the globe. These appear to be just a direct transmission of knowledge. If someone watches a video on how to cook and they do something wrong, they are unable to ask the person who made the tutorial what they should do. They are equally unable to obtain feedback on their progress. Here we begin to see some of the issues caused by over-reliance of education on only a transmission of knowledge. Surely it must also be remembered that not all nations have access to this technology. These countries are being placed at an increasingly greater disadvantage as they cannot reach this knowledge economy and won't have access to the combined knowledge being shared by other nations. The notion of direct knowledge-based transmission has been especially relevant due to the COVID-19 pandemic, from which a year-long lockdown for the UK began in March 2020. This pandemic forced schools to close their doors and introduce a purely online style of teaching. It is through this that the reality of reliance on technology and pure knowledge-based transmission surfaced. The impact of home education, relying purely on ICT, has been a very divisive topic. After analysing a large amount of data on the impacts of technology and knowledge-reliant home education, I've organised their findings into various categories and shall discuss regarding their impact to education. Whilst I would argue that online technology-based education is detrimental to a child's learning and should generally be avoided, there are some benefits that should be recognised. Singh and Thurman's systematic review noted that a huge benefit of online learning is that students can be anywhere to access their learning rather than having to travel to school. Similarly, with asynchronous styles, they may also have access to this at any time and not have to get up early and follow their typical school routine. Whilst this ease of access is evidently a benefit, many sources indicate that children's access to internet was of great concern. Thera and Ming analysed that the reliance and provision of online technological devices created a great challenge for institutions. This was echoed by a governmental Ofsted report suggesting that some schools radically tried to provide and fund digital equipment for those in low socio-economic situations by using their own COVID-19 catch-up fund. This situation, as noted by Armand Cooper, is far more problematic in other nations. She states that countries like Nigeria, who were unable to take their learning online, as many of their students had no access to internet. This shows how important in-school education is. The International Telecommunication Union found, as noted by Howard Richardson, that in 2019, whilst 97% of the global population lived in an area with some form of internet availability, only 53.6% were in fact connected. and if subsequently such a large proportion of the world's population are not connected to the internet, then both the gaps of educational attainment and inequality will rapidly increase between those who have access to digital resources and those who don't. It must also be noted that some students may have to share a computer or device with a sibling. This can create unfair disadvantages for students who cannot access materials when necessary, or when a live lesson is scheduled. Similarly, Amran Cooper indicates that many parents are unable to supervise their children whilst they are learning, which further creates the unfair divisions amongst families in different situations. Multiple studies found that the face-to-face interaction students have with their teachers is crucial. As Thera and Ming suggest, technology-reliant learning is not beneficial, as the physical bond between teacher and student is of great importance. Research carried out by both Hodges and Sejidi both indicate that generally, online learning appeared to be of lower quality to that of face-to-face learning, and subsequently less effective for students. They suggest that due to this lack of quality and lack of effectiveness of online environments, it is detrimental for students to learn this way. This evidence further adds to the necessity of school-based education and how technology-reliant knowledge transmission cannot compete with the personal relationships students have with their teachers. Research into the Dutch primary school system indicated that pupils have made little to no progress during their lockdown, despite them having a high level of technological preparation. This was echoed in the UK, as a report from the University of Southampton calculated that in the first month of lockdown, pupils in England had suffered a high degree of learning loss. As noted by the Ofsted report, both papers revealed that the loss was more pronounced for students from disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds than other children. They conclude that from these reports alone, online remote education would be a poor replacement for normal classroom practice. It is also important to note that children need to be in a social environment as they are able to learn from their peers and socialise. As it must be remembered, children are children. They should have the ability to play and learn physically. If they are stuck behind a computer screen and directly lectured information, they are less likely to retain that information and even concentrate at all. This was echoed by multiple research papers. Gill, Haley and Harland all indicated that education outside of school, relying on technology, created large issues with the student concentration and distraction. Haley revealed that many students would become distracted by their phones or access to general internet browsing. Both Gill and Harland stated that student engagement was the most challenging aspect of teaching, and that students' motivation was a main barrier for the successful implementation of online learning models. The suggestion of lack of motivation begins the discussion on perhaps the most egregious aspect of technology-reliant education, and this is children's mental health. According to Brazendale, many studies claim the closure of schools may have an effect on students' mental and physical health. Both studies by YouGov, commissioned by Ofsted, and the Office for National Statistics into the main challenges of learning from home, indicate focus and motivation as major concerns, as well as the lack of interaction with other children. The Office for National Statistics separately states that results from 3 different surveys suggest that more than half of students report their well-being and mental health had drastically worsened as a result of the pandemic and online learning. It is clearly evident that online knowledge-based transmission learning is not an adequate replacement for the quality students receive in school. As the Ofsted report suggests, the lack of social and communication development may play a large factor in the mental well-being of students. Whilst this factor alone should prove that knowledge-based transmission education is not adequate, various reports also identify other issues that this presents. The Ofsted report made note of the impact online learning had on SEND students. Their survey found that 20% more parents of pupils with special educational needs said that their child had been disengaged with learning in comparison to those without additional needs, and that the negative and social-emotional impact of remote learning would be more severe for some of these pupils. This raises another crucial aspect of education, especially for SEND students. Schools allow for one-on-one time with students, direct personal relationships, feedback and care, which are crucial to many SEND students. If these interactions are taken away and replaced with pure knowledge transmission, it is far more likely they will fall behind. It was noted by Rao on the impact of COVID on medical training that the lack of access to equipment and practical training had a catastrophic impact on learning and progress. This again raises another large issue with online education, as echoed by Jan. Many subjects require face-to-face methods or practical tools and training in order to learn. Due to this, whilst immediate access to knowledge is good, it will never be a substitute for traditional school settings. Finally, as pointed out by Tahib's research paper, one major benefit of schools that many low-income students relied upon was various initiatives for free school meals, breakfast clubs and other supportive benefits. A school is not just there to give knowledge to students, it is a support net for their lives inside and outside of school. There are students whose morale and well-being is firmly maintained by their schools' support, and the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent knowledge transmission has taken away that valuable resource and lifeline for many. This is but another reason why online knowledge learning is detrimental to students' success. It is clear then that whilst the growth of the knowledge economy and new ICT infrastructure increasingly push the direct transmission of knowledge to students in school, aiming to reduce a teacher's role to that of information giver, it is evident that in practice, education is far more than this. While students live surrounded by technology, they need time away in a separate learning environment where they can gain life skills and development from their peers, socialise and maintain their mental well-being. The COVID pandemic has proved that successful education is far more than knowledge transmission, and subsequently shows how vital and diverse in-school education really is.